from New Jersey is underway. And it looks like Nass is a little gun shy. But Matt, you are on the draw. You lost the roll. Rittiner going to play an island. He'll pass the turn back over to Nass with a volcanic island. You can see a Force of Will over in his hand. It looks like he has a Stoneforge Mystic as well, as Rittiner will draw a card.
Yeah, Rittiner's draw is exactly what he wants to see here. It's a Divining Top. This is the glue that holds Miracles together, and it's going to be Daze Proof here. Matt will fight over this if he can.
Now, this is the one card that you do want to counter from this deck. It is, as you mentioned, the glue that holds the deck together. We'll see if Nass is going to try to use a counter spell here. It looks like he is going to use his Force of Will. The question is, what blue card will he remove as he goes down to 19?
This shows Matt recognizes just how high of a priority this card is. Joe would like nothing more than to play this top and then just to trade land drops for a few turns.
You know, the interesting thing about top and countering it is Matt's going to remove a Force of Will to his Force of Will. Is, you know, it looks really bad if they just play another top, but, you know, there's no guarantee that they'll draw 2 and they're opening, you know, 8 or 9 cards of the game. So I've always been a big fan of countering this early.
Yeah, Joe can force back. He has a Brainstorm and a Force of Will here. Looks like he's going to do just that.
Yeah. And this is kind of shows the importance that he feels top is in his deck, and now there's a main deck Pyroblast. This is what this tournament is going to be all about. You're going to see kind of wild stuff like this where you're going, is that Pyroblast really in your main deck? Like, are you sure did you forget to decipher anything? No, this is the world we live in because of Treasure Cruise.
Yeah, I'd said you either want to play Treasure Cruise or beat Treasure Cruise. Matt's taking the third option. He's going to pick both. Yep. Main decking Pyroblasts alongside of his Treasure Cruises.
He's going to sacrifice a blue to Delta here, go down to 18. It's a Stoneforge Mystic, so you have to assume he's going to search up a Tundra. And there that is, and now it's time to go find an equipment, assuming this does resolve, which it does. So Batter Skull or GT, it will be the Batter Skull. And Nass is off to a pretty nice start on a mulligan to 6.
This counter war left Joe's hand in pieces. He got rid of his Brainstorm, and now he is just left with Swords, Terminus, and lands. It's a lot of board control, but nothing else. He's going to have Swords to buy him some turns here, but he's going to need some blue cards to establish the control he wants.
Of course, Nass doesn't know the cards in Rittiner's hand, so, you know, you see these exchanges, but Rittiner doesn't have a top in play, and he doesn't have very many cards in his hand, so you have to be pretty happy with how things are going, given the mulligan, given that you were able to win the counter war. Also, I suppose he can refill his hand soon here, as he does have a Treasure Cruise over there, and looks like he has another Stoneforge Mystic.
Right, and that's why cards like Treasure, that shows just what Treasure Cruise is doing to Legacy right now. You have these fair decks that fight each other, and an Ancestral Recall of any form will just blow those matchups wide open.
GTA is searched up by Nass with his second Stoneforge Mystic. He's threatening to put a Batter Skull into play next turn. As you mentioned, Rittiner does have a copy of Terminus in his hand, but he is a little ways away from that one. One thing that I have noticed this weekend, just talking with players that are playing these Delver strategies, it actually looks like, Matthias, that players are moving away from Daze.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah, which something I found too. I found that was pretty interesting. They just felt like, you know, people are going to play around it when maybe they're not supposed to, so maybe I can slice down the number of copies that I play. Or some players, I talked to Dandro in a little while, he just said, I don't think Daze is very good in the deck at all. So he's kind of moving away from it. Ari Lax as well are moving away from Dazes. He's playing Blue-Red Delver this weekend, wants more burn spells in his deck. You take a look at Nass's deck list, he only has 2. Rittiner, he drew a Jace the Mind Sculptor for the turn. He's searching for a Volcanic Island right now. He's probably giving some pause to, do I play this Jace? It could get dazed. But right. Nass only has 2 of them in his deck.
Yeah, Matt down to 2 days, and these are trends we've seen in Delver. How many Stifles, how many Dazes. They really do, you know, they're the kind of cards that once everybody expects you have them, they become worse. So maybe Daze is on its way out. I would, you know, it's one of the cards that can go out and back in.
We're going to see a Brainstorm here, 2 Brainstorms, and a Flooded Strand where the draw's there for Rittiner. Of course, does have to put 2 cards back, and that will finish his turn off. But the Mind Sculptor is in play. And, you know, his Jace is a little bit, you know, it's good here, obviously. It's a little bit dangerous to only have it at 3 against a deck that you have to assume is playing Lightning Bolt. But Joe wants his cards, and we'll see if it works out.
Yeah, he is doing a good job of playing around Lightning Bolt here, cashing in his cards right away, just in case there was a removal spell. There was, I'm sure, a temptation on his part to just bounce the Stoneforge Mystic. If Matt doesn't have a removal spell, that's probably the stronger play. However, Joe's hedging his bets here and saying, okay, if I want the Brainstorm at the very least if I'm going to get Lightning Bolted.
Nass drew a Ponder for the turn. I think he's deciding if he wants to play the Ponder to try to find another land, or to just say, you know what, I've got my 2 mana, I got my Stoneforge Mystic, I'm good to go. But it looks like he's reaching for mana, and he will cast a Ponder.
And I want to talk about the choice Matt had to make here. He could either leave up red or white mana. If he's leaving up red mana, it means he's digging to Lightning Bolt. If he leaves up white mana, it means he wants to ensure that Stoneforge activation. This, by leaving up red mana here, it's showing that he's not he doesn't feel very good about this board state. He's really hoping to just draw into Lightning Bolt to recover.
Don't forget, there's also a 5th out in his deck as well, because he can draw Pyroblast to take care of the Jace as well.
Absolutely.
Typically, we only think of Lightning Bolt in this situation, right? It's game number 1, it's Jeskai Delver, but Nass does have a 5th card he can draw to in Pyroblast. He has 2 in his main deck, but he's already used one, of course. So 5 outs to get Jace off of the table right now. You saw him shuffle with a Ponder. His draw was a Misty Rainforest. So
and that was pretty fortunate on his
not
side.
the bolt he's looking for to get Jace off the table, but it's still a way for him to search up white mana and still activate Stoneforge. And there is a Tundra. This game, we're kind of right on the edge about who is kind of taking control here. It feels like it's swinging Rittiner's way now, as there's a Terminus.
Yeah, he's going to go. He can Terminus here. So Matt's not going to get to untap with a creature, and Joe will have a Jace in place. So you got to give Joe the favorite right now. He got a Jace down, and he got to untap with it.
Nass could slide in the Batter Skull, but then the Living Weapon Germ token would be gone. So maybe he just slides in the GT here instead. It's basically free at this point. But I agree with you. Now that Joe has cast a Terminus, which he put back with Jace last turn, and he has Jace on an empty board, well, I think we know how that goes.
It's very hard to lose when you activate Jace 3 times in a game. Doesn't even really matter which modes you picked.
GT is going to come in. Stoneforge Mystic will go to the bottom. That means Terminus is done resolving. And Joe's already drawn his card for the turn, which of course was Terminus. So now he gets to move forward and decide what he wants to do with the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, pair of Brainstorms in hand. Especially with the style of deck Joe's playing, all he's going to try to do here is draw into some removal spells, continue to make land drops, resolve Brainstorms. Nothing fancy.
Yeah, the question is, how does it use his Jace's turn? You can see that he has 2 Brainstorms in the hand. It looks like he's going to go Faith Sealing here. Getting Jace up to 5 does a nice job of dodging Lightning Bolt. The top card on Nass's deck is a Swords of Plowshares. Basically useless in this matchup.
Yeah, and I like the play that Joe made there. It wasn't so much to try to control Matt's draws as much of to get Jace out of Bolt range.
Nass going to go reaching for some mana. Perhaps 3 of it. See what he'd like to try to deploy this turn. The creatures in his deck, he has 4 Delvers, he has 4 Stoneforge Mystics, and 3 copies of Young Pyromancer. He's going to go treasure cruising. If you're watching at home, get used to this.
Yeah, we've seen them already a lot today, and this is going to be happening all weekend.
Nass's attempt at drawing 3 cards. We'll see if it does resolve. He's got 3 cards in his hand, one of which is a Batter Skull. Swords as well. This will be a Brainstorm in response. So Rittiner is going to try to find a way to maybe counter this as a Flooded Strand, a Mountain, and another copy of Brainstorm added to the grip.
Yeah, doesn't look like that he'll burn a second one to try to find it. He can let Matt draw cards. He does have Jace, so Matt can get card advantage, but it's not like Matt's going to pull ahead on cards here. Not as long as Jace is in play.
Ponder, Stoneforge Mystic, and Swords of Plowshares. The draw is there for Nass off of Treasure Cruise. All fine cards.
Absolutely.
But he's still got a Jace to answer.
Right. Joe gets to reset the top of his deck, too. So he gets to, this is still the game he wants to be playing. He's making land drops. He's drawing cards. And he's keeping all the creatures off Matt's side of the board.
Island is the land that Joe searched out with the Flooded Strand. We'll see how he wants to use Jace, if he wants to go Fate Sealing or Brainstorming. If you're in Joe's seat, what do we like doing here?
I think because now your Jace is safe from Lightning Bolt, the big problem you have right now is that you have 2 cards in your hand to, I think, 5 on Matt's side. It's got to be Brainstorming for a while. You want to get just more cards in your hand. You'd like to find a Divining Top, maybe even a Counterbalance if you could. That would be a great one.
Arid Mesa, Flooded Strand, and another Jace. So not the cards he's looking for in this particular activation. Don't forget, he's already played a land for the turn, so no fetching to be done just yet. Looks like he may set those fetch lands back on top of his deck.
Yeah, that was a miss on his part. At the same time, Matt doesn't have any threats as of yet, and the Insurance Jace is actually pretty good for Joe here.
Nass going to untap those 3 lands. It's time to take a draw step. Didn't get a great look at what he's found. Looks to be a Young Pyromancer, actually. So not a bad draw here. Again, Young Pyromancer has risen in popularity quite a bit due to Blue-Red Delver.
Yeah, he is an army in and of himself. So he plays so well with all these cheap cantrips, and Treasure Cruise also plays well with these cantrips. Which is, I think, why we've seen him get so much more popular.
And to me, it's about time, really. This card was way too good for not seeing that much play.
Yeah, and that's just a good way to put it. He is a lot like a red Tarmogoyf. He can be 5 power for 2 mana.
Yeah. It's going to come down now. Rittiner's going to take a look at those 2 Brainstorms and a Jace. Says that will resolve. Here's a Ponder. 1 elemental token on its way. You have to imagine this ponder will resolve as well here for Nass as he takes a look at the top 3 cards and he'll decide if he wants to keep them or shuffle them away. One of those cards there is a lightning bolt. And looks like he's going to shuffle.
Yeah, if Jace were at 3, he'd be a lot more interested in lightning bolt. But now that he's at 5, he's going to want a more permanent answer. Maybe just more threats. Probably cards like Pyroblast, more counter spells so that he can push through a threat, and eventually maybe that threat will take care of Jace.
Mystery card coming. Looks to be a polluted delta there for Nass. So ponder's done resolving. There's the elemental token from the young Pyromancer. Nass looking to build a bit of a board here as there's the delta, and he'll just pass the turn back. Rittiner knows his draw. It's going to be a fetch land. We'll see if it's the Strand or the Mesa that he opted to put on top. And it will be the Flooded Strand.
Yeah, and before he cracks that land, we'll probably see a Brainstorm here. The way he can see the most cards is by brainstorming, then cracking a fetch, then brainstorming again.
And right now, he's in the market for the most cards he can find. He will brainstorm first with Jace, as you did mention. So there's a Mesa, there's a Swords, and there's another copy of Arid Mesa. So we'll see what cards he puts back. You have to imagine it'll be those 2 fetch lands. Those go back very quickly.
Right. See, very good sequencing with his cantripping effects here. So he got to see maximum cards there. He's going to crack a fetch. And now he'll get to see 3 more off one of the actual brainstorm cards in his hand.
Going to search up a Tundra. One thing that Miracles can do now, against a lot of these decks, for sure against Blue Red Delver, but it looks like against Jeskai Delver and other Delver decks, is they've moved away from Wasteland quite a bit. So, you know, he can feel pretty safe searching up the old Tundra here.
Yeah, and you know, that's, to me, has been the biggest change, actually, when you talk about Legacy over the last month, is people have really moved away from Wasteland.
It's a Brainstorm. That'll find a Force of Will, a Ponder, and a bit of a mystery. Don't have a great look at that one. Looks like a copy of Dig Through Time. Yeah,
Dig Through Time, and remember, Miracles doesn't play Treasure Cruise, but it does play that card. We will probably see the strength with here. You know, right now you could think, hey, Joe would really like to find a Terminus. Well, okay, Dig Through Time can help him get to that point.
There's so many applications with Dig in Miracles. Players have been slowly adding this to the Miracles deck. 1 copy here, 2 copies there. I know Reduke has given this card a try in this deck, and you have to take his thought process and opinion very, very highly, especially when it does come to Miracles. He's had so much success with the deck. But Dig is kind of a card that you kind of incorporate to find a card like Terminus, you did mention, even though you might have to hard cast it, but he can put it back on top of his deck with Brainstorm or Jace here. You can also just find him an answer to some of the problems he's looking for. And it has this nice benefit of resetting a Jace. There's a Sword. It's going to go after the young Pyromancer, it looks like. Got to keep that thing off the table.
Yeah, he's going to get that off the table. He did have to put his backup Jace back on top of his deck, which means if he goes for that Dig Through Time on end step, the backup Jace will be gone, unless he picks it off the 7 cards.
Sure. You know, all the talk has been about Treasure Cruise, and deservedly so. The card is absolutely fantastic, and we'll see a lot of it this weekend, but we can't really sleep on Dig. Dig is very powerful, too.
Yeah, in any deck that can afford to wait for the 2nd mana, I think Dig Through Time is just a better card.
Okay.
If you want to talk about the effect that both of them get, looking at 7, getting 2 is nearly always better than drawing 3. The fact that Treasure Cruise can be discounted down to 1, however, especially in a 18-land strategy like Delver, is just too much opportunity to pass up.
It's an attack for the Elemental token. The Mind Sculptor is down to 4 counters, as Nass has to be a little bit worried now. The opponent got to Brainstorm for the Jace and then cast a Brainstorm, set up their deck the way they like it. He's going to sacrifice a Polluted Delta here, go down to 19, and attempt to resolve a Batterskull. So we'll see if the equipment does get into play.
With 1 more land, Joe could hard cast that Force of Will.
See if he's going to maybe dig in response here as he goes reaching for the graveyard.
And now we get to see our first look at Dig Through Time today.
I do like the addition of this card to Miracles. It will resolve. So Jace and Ponder are the cards you are on top. There's a top, a Terminus, a Counterbalance. Number 6 is another copy of Terminus. And Joe, you get 1 more.
That's a pretty good 7. He's got the whole counter top lock. Maybe he can't take a Counterbalance just yet. There's a lot of things on the board he needs to clean up, but he has got all the tools in his hand right now.
If he wants to take a Terminus, he has the mana to hard cast it. As you mentioned, he can take top plus Counterbalance and get that party started. He's already got an answer to the Germ token in play with Jace. He can just bounce that. So life is pretty good here for Mr. Rittiner, and we'll decide what he elects to take with Dig Through Time in just a moment.
Looks like it's counter top he took. So no Terminus. If he had the Terminus, he could have set one up with the Jace and the Divining top, but he feels not threatened by the cards on the board, I would say.
He's going to use a Forceful, removing a Brainstorm. Keep the Batter Skull off the table. Nothing out there to mess with his Jace, except for that Elemental token, which is very slow at that. And then he can get topless counterbalance online and maybe walk away with it.
Yeah, and this is just the strength of Dig Through Time, right? He had neither piece of the counter top lock, and now he has them both.
Going to reorganize the mana here a little bit. We'll see how he wants to sequence his spells and abilities this turn. Of course, does have a Jace to use. Looks like he's going to lead out with a counterbalance. Nass will take a look at his hand. He's got some dead weight over there in Swords to Plowshares. Backup Stoneforge Mystic as well. Not great here as he already has both of his equipment. There's a Sensei's Divining Top.
Joe still playing around Wasteland. Not sure if Matt Nass plays it, but you see him. This has been a trend over the course of the game. He's always leaving his basic lands up.
A benefit that he has the ability to do that is now he's going to actually use the Brainstorm, a top, a Swords, and another Jace. He can set his library as how he'd like, but he is certainly in the driver's seat right now.
This is what a one game looks like for Miracles. You have countertop, you have Jace, your opponent doesn't have any threat in play.
Yeah, grinding him into submission, really.
Yeah. It's just a matter of time then until Joe finds and Entreat the Angels. Or maybe just ultimates a Jace.
Looks like Treasure Cruise may have been the draw here for Nass this turn. So he's going to go reaching for some mana, equip the Cheetah over to the Elemental token. Joe gives it a rather sarcastic thumbs up. I think he's going to reach for that Swords of Plowshares, and he will. So we'll see if this resolves. And it does. So there goes the Elemental token. For Matt, he gets a life. What a nice guy.
It's very nice. Yeah, it's... And so this is another way you can blank Treasure Cruise in the late game. You know, Matt drawing extra cards doesn't actually matter too much to Rittiner right now because of the fact that his deck does have a lock piece.
Stoneforge is on the stack. Gonna spin the top. Pyroblast, a top and a Jace is what Joe is looking at. So Stoneforge will be resolving here momentarily. But again, no equipment to search up. Batter Skull got countered by Force Will, and GT is already in play.
Yeah, 1, 1, and 4, no 2.
So that's good to go. And we'll go back Rittiner's way. He's got a card coming here, and he's still got a Jace to use. Looks like he elected to draw Pyroblast for the turn. Spinning the top, we'll see a new card here in the third one. It's a copy of Counterbalance. There's the 2-mana spell he's looking for.
All right, so now he can, between the top and the Counterbalance, I doubt he'll draw either of them. If he continues to float those two, he can counter nearly every spell in Matt's deck.
Confidently bouncing the Stoneforge Mystic since he has a 2 on top of his deck. We'll go back Nass's way. Nass will draw a card. Ponders what he's found. But now he's working his way into 1 and 2 mana spell territory, and we know what Joe's deck looks like.
Joe has enough mana to keep switching that top card if he needs to. It's unlikely that Matt's resolving another spell here.
Delver of Secrets. Place the Counterbalance trigger on the stack. Spin the top. Find the top. Reveal the top. Goodbye, Delver of Secrets. Next up for Nass.
Yeah, he's gonna tap. He's got to see it. He needs to see that Joe has all these mana costs.
How about a Stoneforge Mystic? How about trigger this and spin the top? How about show you a Counterbalance? That one's going to go to the graveyard too.
All right, so when we look over to Matt's list, what does he have that doesn't cost 1 or 2? Because you know that Joe's going to keep those both floating.
Well, the Batter Skull's gone.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to even play anymore. I mean, he's got a Treasure Cruise that he can cast. We know that Joe actually has a copy of Pyroblast in his hand, so he could counter that if he wanted to. Nothing to reveal in that instance to Treasure Cruise. He does have Dig Through Time in his deck, so we could see that show up maybe in this match. It's adorable, isn't it? But the reason Nass concedes that game is there's no way out of that lock. It's not a soft lock at that point. It's basically a hard lock. And Joe Rittiner is going to win game number 1 over Matthew Nass. Miracles up a game over Jeskai Delver as we will turn our attention to the sideboard. We'll start with Nass as he'll be on the play. He's got a Hydro Blast, 2 copies of Vendilion Click, 2 Pithy Needles, 2 Red Elemental Blast, 3 copies of Containment Priest, a very popular sideboard card this weekend, along with 2 copies of Wear and Tear, 2 Flusterstorms, and a Meddling Mage. Mr. Hunt, what do we like?
Well, he's gonna have to have some more threats and maybe some more ways to protect his threats. His deck's set up in the main deck to be a kind of this control, like this hybrid control deck. He doesn't want to play the control game against Rittiner. That's not going to work very well. So I'm thinking Vendilion Click. That seems pretty decent here. Red Elemental Blasts. Those are also quite good. Wear Tear, you can get rid of a counterbalance. I don't know if that's exactly the route he wants to go down, but those are the cards that I would see him using this matchup. Maybe even Pithing Needle for the Sensei's Divining Top.
That is an important card to the Miracle strategy as we saw that game. We take a look at Joe's sideboard. we are going to find, well, we're going to save that one for a minute. That's the interesting one. 2 Pyroblast, 2 Wear and Tear, a Pyroclasma, Spell Pierce, an Enlightened Tutor, a Keranos, God of Storms, a Blood Moon, great in this matchup, a Circle Protection Red, a Rest in Peace, Neither Sworn Canoness, and 3 copies of Geist of Saint Draft?
Yeah, so 3 copies of Geist of Saint Draft is very interesting to me out of Miracles. Certainly gives you the ability to win a game faster. I wouldn't be surprised to see him use that strategy here. I don't know how much I'm curious what matchup he wants it in. Certainly in the mirror, it seems great.
I think you can really kind of maybe take someone by surprise. They expect you to board into more controlling cards, maybe like a Keranos, maybe a small Enlightened Tutor engine like Joe does have here, but you could probably flip the script a little bit and go with Geist of Saint Draft and maybe take them by surprise that way.
Yeah, you could take them by surprise that way. There's something to be said for just, keeping it simple, going with Blood Moon. That's a card that actually locks Matt out of the game.
Yep.
Just playing, a couple more blasts. He has 2 Pyroblasts in his board. They'll both be pretty good here. And just playing that kind of strategy, maybe even the Spell Pierce as well, and just continuing his game 1 strategy. But access to 3 Geist of Saint Draft is certainly interesting. It can catch someone off guard. Matt will probably always have a blocker in play for it. I don't know. I would want to play that in a matchup where I didn't think my opponent would have a 2/2.
The card that really stands out to me in this sideboard, well, I suppose outside of Geist, which I did not expect to see in the sideboard of Miracles this weekend, is the copy of Circle Protection Red. Don't expect to see it to come in this matchup. This isn't really a burn-heavy matchup, but that's very telling about what Joe thinks is going to happen in this tournament and what we already know, which is a lot of people are playing Burn.
Right, so Burn's been very popular here. Blue-Red Delver's been popular, which has a lot of aspects of a Burn deck. I don't even think it would be unreasonable to board a Circle of Protection Red against the straight Blue-Red Delver.
Yep.
Now, Jeskai Delver is a lot more of a Stoneforge deck than it is a Delver of Secrets deck. There aren't enough red cards really to do that here.
There are definitely some haters in the house this weekend. I hope you have your Hydro Blast ready and your Blue Elemental Blast. These Burn players, and I think, some Burn players are going to have a successful weekend. I think there are a lot of people playing the deck this weekend. It's almost inevitable that we'll see a Burn deck top 16, maybe one of the top 8. We'll see how things go. But, seeing a card like Circle Protection Red, again, very telling about players that are basically saying, I don't want to lose this deck. I
mean, last round we saw Joshua Cho win post-board games against his Burn opponent by playing Zurin Orb.
Yep.
And if you want to talk about cards that are real, just a nightmare for the Burn deck, he cast Zurin Orb on a board where his opponent had 2 Price of Progresses in hand.
Ooh, well.
That's a lot of life points right there.
Yeah, that is a delight. That's what that is. Zurin Orb, dust those off. I haven't seen one of those in Legacy play in a little while. The only time I really saw that is, kind of in the lands decks. They would be able to Tolaria West for one when they were splashing blue. Outside of that, that might just be a nice little 1 of or 2 of. And one thing we know about those Treasure Cruise decks is they can actually afford to play 1 of because they get through their decks so fast. They can see a lot of cards.
They can see a lot of cards. They don't really need their lands. They don't mind putting more things in the graveyard either. They can play land 4, you can sack it and then Treasure Cruise it.
I wonder how popular that one will be. That's a nice 1 of in the sideboard of these blue-red or other Delver decks, though Nass does not have that this particular weekend. 2-time Grand Prix champion is down a game right now, 2 Miracles, but again, for Nass, winning that Grand Prix in Nashville recently with Jesse Hampton and Jacob Wilson puts him back on the Pro Tour, and we'll see if he can stay there again. Very skilled player. I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah. Was known for winning Grand Prix Oakland back in 2010 with Elves combo, but has a lot of range outside of combo decks, to be sure.
He's very comfortable playing those decks. Your Storms, Deceiver Twin type decks, Elves as well. It was kind of his hallmark, but he is more than capable of playing this kind of strategy. He's got a Volcanic Island start. Rittiner draws an actual copy of Counterspell. I always get really happy when I see Counterspell.
It's good to know that these old cards still get to, still stand up the time. Stuff like just Counterspell's very simple, very elegant.
I'm always a big fan of that card. See what Nass is able to do on his second turn. Looks like he may lead off with a cantrip. He will. It's a Ponder. And there's a Pyroblast. So Rittiner is going after that very aggressively.
Yeah, just trying to 1-for-1 trade here. Has a lot of the elements of a fair matchup here. Matt could Force of Will here. He probably doesn't want to Force of Will. That would be 2-for-1ing himself. But he might have to based on his land situation.
Yeah, this is very interesting. He's giving this a lot of thought, and now it looks like he may be reaching for a Force of Will. Maybe yes, maybe no. Ponder will be countered. There's a Flooded Strand. We'll just pass the turn back Rittiner's way.
Rittiner would have to be very happy if a Force of Will had gotten drawn out there.
Oh, yeah. Looks like another Pyroblast was the draw. There's a Scalding Tarn and just passing the turn back over to Nass. Nass will untap the Volcanic Isle, and it's his third turn of the game. You see the daze in his hand. Drew a copy of Meddling Mage for the turn.
A lot of good one-for-oneing in Joe's hand, and his cards are very versatile, too. He's got Counterspell, he's got Red Elemental Blast. Those are two cheap, hard counters here. And I think why it's really good is because what that'll do is it'll slow down the game, and as the more you slow down the game, the more cards like Daze in Matt's hand will just really have trouble trading one for one.
I think that's part of the reason that some players, as we mentioned kind of at the top, have moved away from Daze. But Nass does still have it in his deck after sideboard. We'll see if he's able to snag something with it, as there's a Needle. I think we know what that's probably going to name.
Yeah, if it resolves, he's going to hit Divining Top with it.
Oh, he could.
He let it resolve. It could name Scalding Tarn.
It could name Tarn now, yeah. That's actually kind of interesting.
Let's see what he goes with.
Take a look at Nass's mana base. He does have 2 Scalding Tarns of his own in his deck, so this could be very interesting, yeah.
Do you want to Stone Rain your opponent? To be fair, the answer is probably no. Even like Stone Rain, I'm not even positive Matt would want them. I don't think he wants that kind of effect in this matchup.
Well, we'll get confirmation as soon as we have it. He's just going to name top.
Yeah. Matt trading his turn for one of Joe's lands, while cool that he could have made the play, isn't really the strategy he wants to do. Joe would just make more lands and say, okay, you got my land.
Yeah. And Joe didn't really hesitate very much, to be fair, when the Needle was played, because, you know, a lot of the times we'll see, okay, I'll crack my land and go ahead and name a card, but he was like, yeah, if you want to name this, that's fine. And Nass opted not to. So he plays a Polluted Delta and just passes the turn back. The way that this game is going right now, kind of this just draw-go aspect of this match, seems like it does favor Rittiner.
It's great for Rittiner. I mean, they're just trading lands and saying go. I mean, Rittiner's the one with hard counters in his hand. Matt's the one who has both a Spell Pierce and a Daze in his hand. Advantage is clearly to Rittiner.
Keranos was the draw for Rittiner last turn. Nass will play another copy of Polluted Delta. He's very reactive at this point. He's just going to pass the turn back over to Rittiner again. Looks like Joe's going to go a reach-in, and he will cast a Brainstorm end of turn, maybe trying to get set up to resolve this Keranos.
Yeah, he may also just want to shuffle away Keranos. Well, you have to think Matt's hand can't just be lands, right? So if I'm Rittiner, I don't know if I really want to fight over Keranos right now. I might just want to make more land drops and find more counter spells and just kind of hang out. Maybe find a Wear Tear.
We didn't find counter spells, but he found his 2 copies of Counterbalance along with the Sensei's Divining Top. So now the decision is actually pretty difficult, I think, for Joe about what cards to put back, because his hand is pretty stocked at this point. You see the Pyroblast has got another Brainstorm. We know about the Keranos, has actual counterspell in his hand. Got some nice cards in the grip here.
Yeah, he's going to put back a top and a Counterbalance. I think he wanted 1 copy of Counterbalance. I was wondering whether he'd keep 2 and stitch the Keranos just to have an insurance one in case the first one gets countered.
Gonna search up a Tundra here. Looks like he's identified what I think most will when playing against Delver strategies this weekend, which is my opponent doesn't have Wasteland in his deck. That's such a weird change from how much Legacy you and I have watched over the years, not to see Wastelands in these Delver decks.
Well, these Delver decks, I mean, they're cutting Wastelands, they're playing less Daze, they don't play Stifle. They're letting their opponents into the game far more than we've seen Delver do.
Let's see what Rittiner's draw is this turn. Copy of Wear Tear.
All right. Well, now he's going to wish he hadn't shuffled away the Divining Top, but...
Of course, the Needle naming top at this point, but Joe has found his answer. Can save that for much later down the road, and he's just going to pass the turn back. Yeah,
it's interesting. He still doesn't have a land. That's probably fine. Matt doesn't have threats yet.
Both these players really doing a lot of posturing, waiting for someone to make a move so they can make their own move, but they both have so many reactive cards in their hands.
And Joe is just trying to 1-for-1.
Yep.
This is on, because Matt's cards can't do that as well. It's on Matt to do something, make a threat, push something through. He has Meddling Mage. It's not a great card, but it's a threat. It makes Joe do something.
A lot of the times in this matchup, we see Meddling Mage named Terminus, but we know that Joe has many ways to get Meddling Mage off the table. Swords of Plowshares, blast effects. It's not hard for him to do. Nass plays a Delta for the turn. That's land number 5. Just has to figure out how he wants to proceed. It's been a weird game so far. Doesn't look like he wants to cast a spell.
Yeah.
Nope.
And he's not gonna. Ideally, he'd like to draw something just like a Delver or a Stoneforge.
Something really cheap.
Something cheap that really demands an answer.
Here's a Brainstorm from Joe. Joe didn't draw a land again this turn. He drew a Swords of Plowshares. So he might be land hunting with this Brainstorm. That's going to resolve. Flooded Strand is 1. Top is 2. 3 is Arid Mesa. So he's found 2 lands and a top which he can turn on if he's able to get that Needle out of play. Best of luck putting 2 cards back.
Yeah, I'm going to say he'd like to keep all 3 of these. He may just put them back and start drawing them. You know, just not crack his fetch.
That seems like the secret mode on Brainstorm, where
yeah,
you just put the cards back and you draw them.
Top of my deck was really good, it turned out.
It's very rare that we see that, but secret mode may take place on Brainstorm.
I like putting the Divining Top back on top of the deck. You can draw it if this Wear Tear resolves, and if the Wear Tear gets countered, you can shuffle it away. It lets you kind of have your cake and eat it too.
The sequencing of the top and the Wear Tear is very interesting to me, as the Brainstorm is going to resolve. Of course, 2 cards go back, because I can certainly see, as Joe's going to sacrifice his fetch, where he just plays Wear Tear. Oh, he plays Needle first, and it's like, yeah, I'm just casting a Needle. You know, you've got it taken care of, and then you're having the counter war over Wear Tear instead of the top.
Right.
Might make things, excuse me, a little bit interesting.
I mean, and Matt's ready for a counter war. He does have Spell Pierce, Force of Will, which he can now hard cast. Yep. He does have Daze. But there's a lot of things that Matt's going to have to fight over. There's a counterbalance in Joe's hand, too. He's going to have to fight over that. Not to mention the Keranos. That fight's still a ways down the road, but remember, you can't actually Spell Pierce Keranos. He is a creature spell while on the stack.
Volcanic Island was the draw for the turn. I'm very interested to see when Matt's going to make a move, because to me, it's Matt that has to be the one to initiate things. Joe doesn't have to.
He's got to start things. Yep. Joe will just draw cards forever.
Volcanic Island does come into play. 6 lands now, 4 of which do fetch. 3 Deltas and a Flooded Strand. And Matt will just pass the turn back yet again. What I could also see taking place here is that Matt is hoping that Joe will move first, and by doing so, that may be a mistake. Well, this is our first move in what seems like forever. A Wear going after the Needle.
2 mana up, so you can play around Spell Pierce. It's not that Joe needs this to resolve. I think he just wants to make Matt 2-for-1 himself in order to win this fight. You know, if Matt dazes and Spell Pierces, Joe will probably just be like, okay, he'll pay for the first and get countered by the second and be like, all right, I got 2 of your cards. It's great.
I think this is a great test spell, too. You know, how much does Matt care about the Needle? Hard to say. How much does Joe care about the resolving? It doesn't seem like very much, as you mentioned. If it does resolve, that's cool. If it gets a counterspell out of your hand, that's probably cool, too.
Yeah.
Matt's going to go reaching here now.
I think he's going to hard cast a Force of Will at it, or he's at least thinking about it.
If this buys out a Force of Will, if I'm Joe, I'm thrilled.
At least if he's looking at putting 3 lands away, that's what I'm reading off that.
He's going to sacrifice the first one. Down to 19. Let's make it 18 and 17. All right, those are all going to resolve.
Yeah, it is a hard cast Force of Will.
You called it.
I'm surprised he didn't go for his soft permission first.
Tundra, and Volcanic Island. Looks like the Lance is going to get out with the Deltas. And here is a hard cast Force of Will.
Matt doesn't want to concede the 2-for-1. He wants it to be a 1-for-1. Force of Will do that.
I wasn't sure if this is what the fight was going to be. It's a fight from Wear on a Needle. Now here's a counter spell.
Yeah. This gives Matt an opportunity to cash in that Daze and get a full card for it. He's got to be pretty excited about that. If you're Rittiner, you may almost wanted to Pyroblast that instead, just so that you could strand any Dazes.
It's interesting, though, because he might be happy getting Daze out of the hand because he only has 5 lands in play. He might feel very comfortable just windmill slamming Keranos next turn.
And that's true. The last counter in Matt's hand is Spell Pierce, which, as I said before, does not interact well with Keranos.
Yeah.
And if Joe has a 6th land here as well.
Well, that's not a bad draw either. Jace the Mind Sculptor. And he actually does have a 6th land in his hand. He saved that Arid Mesa. I do wonder which Haymaker he's going to cast this turn. You have to imagine he's casting one of these.
Yeah, so he has Jace plus, he has either of these threats plus a Red Blast. He knows that this card's going to resolve. I think he goes for Keranos here. Jace is great, but once Keranos is on the board, does Matt ever get it off?
I don't think so, but he's going to go with the Planeswalker.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that any of these are wrong. They're both great cards.
And Joe's got a great hand. You see the counterbalance, the Keranos that we've talked about, the Pyroblast, and his last card over there is Top. Top doesn't matter all that much, as here's a Brainstorm. It'll draw a Brainstorm, a copy of Terminus, and a Jace. He's got to be ahead now.
I mean, we're at that spot again where Joe has a Jace in play, equal number of cards to Matt, and Matt has no creatures. This is once again where Miracles wants to be.
Well, City likes to put back. You see the other Jace, Terminus as well. He does have that top in his hand. Not great because of the needle that's in play, naming it. Looks like he may consider putting Keranos back too, but he's got a lot of options right now, and he is pretty far ahead. I know the life totals look alike, but it's about what's on the board.
If he has Jace and he has backup Jace, there's not that much reason to need Keranos anymore.
Gonna give this a long thought before putting 2 cards back. Can't surprise you too much. Brainstorm's a very hard card and effect to resolve. He will search with an Arid Mesa. He might try to deploy a counterbalance now too. He's gonna search at the Tundra.
Just gonna go for all the threats here.
He's gonna give it a shot. Nass gonna sacrifice his Flooded Strands and cast Spell Pierce on the counterbalance.
Not a great exchange for Joe. It is still a 1-for-1 on a board where Joe has a Jace, so not terrible.
But we finally had our fight. Joe was able to take advantage, get a Jace through. His counterbalance gets countered, but yes, he did get the Brainstorm. That goes away. Now this is Nass's window. It's open for him.
Yeah, I mean, the question has been the whole game, does Nass have any threats? He wants to Bolt or Pyroblast away this Jace. He really can't afford to let Joe untap with it. There's some dangers, right? This Jace was, in a lot of ways, a test spell. If he doesn't get to keep the Jace, well, Keranos will do just fine.
Nass reaching for mana immediately, so he clearly has something to do. This is not a bad place to start. It's a treasure cruise.
All right, well, if we're playing the 1-for-1 game, drawing 3 is a good spot.
Yes. That much is true.
But still, if he doesn't get rid of Jace, it's really hard to out-counter. Even Treasure Cruise will fall short in getting more card advantage than Jace.
2 cruises and a young Pyromancer is what Nass was drew, off of that Treasure Cruise.
I don't believe he has enough of a graveyard to go cruising again.
2 mana here. Looks like it's going to be a young Pyromancer.
This was a good turn for Matt, but I'm not sure it was good enough. Getting a Pyromancer and extra cards, like I said, is good, but he left his opponent with a Jace and still with plenty of cards in his hand.
That'll be a Meddling Mage. We'll get confirmation on what that is naming in just a moment. So just get the thumbs up there from Joe.
My guess is Terminus, because you really couldn't afford to be Terminus right now.
Yeah, that's what it feels like to me too in this instance. And it is Terminus.
These 2 creatures together are going to have to be able to take down Jace, and that's a pretty tall order. All it takes from Joe is, Jace could bounce, he find a Swords to Plowshares. That would be enough to protect Jace.
Yeah, speak of the devil.
Oh, hey, there's one. That's all right. Well, let's see if that's enough. It seems like it probably will be.
Joe wants to take a look and see exactly what was exiled there. There's the cruise. 2 cards down there. Nass working his way towards another cruise. You mentioned it. He's got answers to what's in play right now. He's got a Swords for the Pyromancer, a Blast for the Meddling Mage if he wants to go that route.
Keep the board clean, activate Jace,
yeah.
Repeat. It's a pretty simple strategy, and I think he's got the tools to do it.
How do you feel about, the Joe Lissette School of Magic here? Looks like Joe's going to Brainstorm, but Lissette likes to play the creatures in his deck. 3 clicks, a Venser, a Snapcaster. You see a Circle Protection Red, another Swords, and a Flooded Strand added. Of course, Joe will have to put 2 cards back, versus playing Jaces and Entreats at your win condition like Reed Duke and Joe's doing right now.
I think there's some merits to both of them. Certainly, by presenting lots of different options, you can keep your opponent a little off balance. That's a lot like what Joe Lissette or Brian Bronduin especially will do with this deck.
Yep.
My own preference is to have a very streamlined deck that's very good at doing one thing. I'm more inclined to play this style of deck, but I do think there's merits to both of them.
Flooded Strand, the land that's going to come into play. Looks like we're going for the big haymaker now. There's a copy of Keranos Goddess Storms. Nass going to take a look at his grip.
Yeah, this play is awesome. I think it's a little greedy. I think he could just kill things and probably make it, kill things and Brainstorm is probably the safer line here, because now he might lose his Jace. But at the same time, making Keranos is awesome.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
It's not going away. It's going to be hard for Matt to win through this also.
Especially when Joe is at 17. Nass will draw a card here. He was behind before. He's really far behind now. This might be a very expensive treasure cruise.
I think it is. Looks like 6. Yeah, that is 8.
Yep.
And it makes an elemental, to be fair.
This is true.
Joe's gonna blast it.
Yeah, no cards for you. So it's going to be an attack over here at Jace. And Joe's fine with letting it die.
Yeah, so that was the thing where it's more or less trading the Keranos and with Jace. It's fine because you see Keranos here is going to shoot down young Pyromancer.
Sword's going to shoot that down. Yeah, he's starting to run away with it now. It's interesting because, Jace is obscenely powerful, as we know. But this is the one thing that Nass can't get off the table is Keranos. Yeah. So Joe can kind of run away with it there and make sure he doesn't get burned out here.
COP red.
With Cop red. What year is this?
I mean, there is a red elemental in play.
Yeah, there is.
So he's not taking damage off that guy.
Force of will to draw. That's a little late. They don't make them like they used to as far as hate cards are concerned for you new school Magic players out there.
Yeah, there was one of these for each color. That's just loads of fun if you haven't ever faced down one of these. If you're playing red, this was great. Your opponent would play one of these and, well, red doesn't, you lose. If they have mana, you're probably dead.
Yeah. Nass gonna attack. Nope, 1 mana.
Just prevent it.
You think this would be a little frustrating for a red player, maybe?
Well, initially, these are from Alpha. The idea was that white was all about protection and healing spells. So of course, yes, white could have a ward. They had a ward in every color. They had a circle protection in every color. It was very on theme for white. Eventually, I think we came to the conclusion with design that white's kind of a jerk. And so we made it do other things, like get lifelink instead.
Vigilance.
Some
other stuff.
Things that didn't just grind the game to a halt.
Nass gonna go reaching for a bunch of mana here. Looks like it might be another expensive treasure cruise again. There's 6, again, 2 cards in the graveyard. He can't love his position in this game, though.
He doesn't have the cards to win right now, so he's gonna have to keep cruising.
It's a 3rd cruise. Will this resolve? Joe's looking at his hand of Brainstorm and Swords.
I don't think Matt can pull back in this. I still don't particularly. I wish we still had a Jason play on Joe's side.
As do I. Like,
Keranos usually draws extra cards or produces lightning bolts. I mean, that's all very good. And I think it will be enough to carry him most likely through this game. But it's so hard to say no to brainstorming every turn.
Yeah. Gonna sacrifice the Flooded Strand. Will Joe. He'll search up just a basic island. Go down to 16 in the process. Looks like he may have some interest in casting a Brainstorm here to maybe try to find a counterspell. He is very far ahead in this game. He just doesn't want to let it slip away. Everything has gone to plan here, both in the previous game and in this one.
Yeah, well, he's just got to seal up some loose holes here. He doesn't have everything taken care of yet. He has some generic answers, but he just needs more cards. I think with enough cards, he can close off Matt's outs.
Yep. Source of Plowshares. Scalding Tarn and a Terminus where the draws off the Brainstorm. Of course, we'll have to put 2 cards back, so not the best of draws there.
No, it's interesting. Had he put the land on top, he could have drawn it. Instead, he put a spell on top, opting for a lightning bolt.
Reveal, Terminus. This is the most adorable thing I've ever seen. Reveal Terminus, I get to nug you and miracle it.
All right. So it's like a very it's a very weird Searing Blaze. Guy takes 3, Matt takes 3.
Well, it's build your own Searing Blaze.
Yeah, it worked out. Yeah. It was just, normally it doesn't come out of this deck,
Nass drew, looks like a Brainstorm, at least for the turn, maybe off the Treasure Cruise, but again, no board here, staring down at Keranos.
You see, look at all these tools in Matt's hand. Matt has drawn up to a 7-card hand, but you still can't shake the feeling that there's nothing he can do.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to even think about. With just a Circle Protection red and a Keranos in play, it does feel like, well, Matt, you have a very large hill to climb.
Well, he has to win with creatures because of the Circle Protection red.
Yep.
And the problem is Keranos shoots creatures every turn. So together, that's really problematic for Matt's deck.
This is a brainstorm.
Not to mention that Joe's hand is just a bunch of swords to plowshares, so it's going to take something like the third creature, the third X4 that Matt can play is probably safe.
Somebody needs a True Name Nemesis.
Yeah.
That's what he needs.
Yes, he could use a True Name Nemesis really badly.
Yeah. Doesn't have him in his deck, though.
Speaking of circle protections, I think one of the most elegant things I saw when True Name Nemesis first came out was I saw a couple players running Circle Protection Blue, which is a card that is almost never seen play in the history of Magic.
Yeah, basically.
But it answers True Name Nemesis. I saw Miracle players run it.
Takes care of Delver, too.
Yeah, no, it's great. It locks. I mean, if Rittiner had a COP Blue and a COP Red in play,
that's it.
What would Matt be able to do anymore?
This game would be over. And this game already kind of feels over. But Nass is going to give it a shot. Puts 2 cards back with his Brainstorm. Misty Rainforest is the land he can play and may just play in a moment.
That'd be a very alpha-esque way of winning of, well, I've gotten a COP in all of your colors, so how do you win anymore?
And I've got lots of mana.
Yeah.
That's going to fetch, going to go down to 14. Does he have a land to search up? Uh-oh. Uh-oh, there it is. All right.
The 4th Volcanic is still there. He has, I think, 1 more Tundra? No.
4 Volcanic, 3 Tundra.
Okay, so that's them all. That's all of them right there.
No basics. And no plateau.
Nope. All right.
We don't see that one very often.
That land doesn't show up too much.
The most hated land in Legacy.
For a while there, Arid Mesa was a more sought-after card than Plateau.
Yeah, which was strange. Yeah. 3 cards coming here for Nass. 2 will have to go back in just a moment.
I mean, the question on my side is, what is Matt drawing to? The fact that he can't get this Keranos off the board is really a problem for him.
And the only thing I can think about, especially because Rittiner just used a Terminus, is maybe just trying to overload and hope that Joe doesn't find a Terminus. He's just going to pass the turn back then. Joe's going to draw a card. Source of Plowshare says, you take 3. There's a fetch land, pass the turn back.
If Matt doesn't play creatures, Joe will gladly send the spells up to Matt's head.
Oh, there's a Vendilion Click.
If I'm Joe, I probably swords it.
Trigger on the stack.
Yeah. You could also afford to take 3 off it. It doesn't matter too much. The cards you care about, the things you can't Keranos, are an EOT. You can Keranos a Vendilion Click as long as you're willing to take 3 off it. You can't Keranos a Germ token. Like, if Matt can find his Batter Skull and then start playing guys and immediately throwing Batter Skull on them, I think that's Matt's way around this Keranos.
Wear tear the draw for the turn. You saw click target Rittiner, put a Swords of Plowshares from the bottom. He's left with 1 Swords and a Mystery card. Nass is going to go reaching for mana here. You see the clock. Got about 2.5 minutes left. The Taxing Probe going to resolve. You'll see the new card is the Scalding Tarn.
Matt could draw this.
This is a Ponder. Or excuse me, a Brainstorm. So 3 cards, 2 going to go back.
Some counter magic, Flusterstorm, Pyroblast, his last Treasure Cruise. See him counting his graveyard there, certainly indicative of the last Treasure Cruise.
Won't be the only time we see that this weekend. There are 6 cards down there.
Don't think I've seen someone resolve this many Treasure Cruises.
Aha! Terror.
All right, so the Circle Protection is down. In response, Joe can activate it a bunch of times if he wanted.
Cruise. And this
Maybe that wouldn't do anything.
This kind of all harkens back
to
you saying, well, you know, Joe's in a great spot, so maybe he can just afford to lose his Jace, but...
Why give it up?
Yeah.
Don't give up your Jace.
All of a sudden here, and you see Matt kind of pick up his pace of play now.
Matt's playing the angles.
Yeah, things are changing a little bit.
This isn't a game that Matt should be this in. He shouldn't be this live to win right now.
Matt is so ready to cast Force of Will. Yeah, he'll force actual anything right now. There's a Force Removing Days, get rid of your swords. I know that's the only spell in your hand. Now you're playing off the top of your deck. What's this? Oh, okay.
Well, just, okay. That's also going to get forced, for the record.
That's an Entreat the Angels.
So it kills the click. Can't do anything about that.
Now that's the, I believe that is the draw for the turn.
Yes.
So he can Miracle this.
Yep.
Because Keranos says you reveal your draw for the turn. It's got some wonky wording on it. We'll see how much mana Joe wants to tap.
I guess the question would be, if you say bolt something, if the miracle window's already gone.
Sure.
I'm not entirely sure how that one works. Probably there's clear intent, so at the most, if he does it in the wrong order, a judge probably gives him a warning and lets it happen anyway.
I think, Joe, right now, the decision is how much do I entreat for? Can I afford to play around Daze? Do I try to play around Spell Pierce? You got a lot of cards in your hand.
Do you play around Daze and Spell Pierce? 3 Angels is probably enough.
2 might be okay, too. But, Force Will takes care of it all the same.
It didn't matter. Whatever number he said, this was happening.
So, bye-bye. Goes entreat the Angels. Nass is going to untap. We know Rittiner's hand is just a Scalding Tarn.
Matt is on such, I love the lines he's done here. He's on such a low probability line. But, you know, he's taking this line like a real trooper, right? He's just, well, if you do all these things wrong and I draw all these cards, then...
Hey, he's got to try. It's turn number 1 of extra turns. Rittiner is down to 12. Sensei's Divining Top. Fire that down.
Yeah, I was going to say, if Rittiner hit 2 lands and Matt flipped his Delvers, he would have had 12.
Yep.
It became harder now. Matt needs to flip it this turn. Okay.
There's a Ponder.
There's a Ponder. It's turn 3. He can put Joe to 9. I think he has a Lightning Bolt of sorts in his hand.
He's
3 damage short right now. And
2,
he really needs Joe to not kill that Delver.
Yeah. Seems rather unlikely because there's a top in play. At the very worst, Joe can draw a card with top and then reveal top to Keranos to shoot down the Delver.
The Pithing Needle's on top.
Oh, you're right. That's
from turn 2.
Yeah, it's 100 turns ago. Yeah, he can't actually spin the top.
Matt found Lightning Bolt. That is enough damage. If he keeps this Bolt, then it means that if Joe bricks on the land, then Matt's good. But Matt's not going to take the Lightning Bolt. All right. I thought he would have kept it.
Yeah.
He has a 1 red card in his hand. It's possible that that's a Pyroblast and not a Lightning Bolt in his hand.
He's got a bolt in his hand.
It's a bolt.
Okay. Let's see what the mystery card is here.
Force of Will. That's no good.
In for 3. Puts you to 9. Turn 3 of extra turns.
I'm curious why he didn't keep the second bolt. Because next turn he'll go 6, and it could work, granted. And there's a land, so he just draws a second card.
Didn't get a great look at what the draw was. Turn 4 of extra turns. Nass is turn 5. What's this? A Delver.
It's not going to do it.
Yeah, I think he comes up 3 damage short. Would have to go back and confirm that was a bolt he saw with the Ponder. Because again, I would be surprised if he did just shuffle a bolt away.
Yeah, he does play.
Surprising.
Bolt and Pyroblast are pretty similar art-wise.
Yeah, they are.
A Pyroblast would be something you'd ship.
She's down to 6. And I think, in just a moment here, assuming our clock and our turns are right, and it looks like those things are correct, that is going to do it. Joe Rittiner is going to win this match for Matt Nass. 1-0. Miracles does take a little while. After all, over Jeskai Delver for Rittiner. He just beat a 2-time Grand Prix champion.
Yeah, and this, you know, you had to wonder just how good has Treasure Cruise made these Delver decks. You know, can you still play Miracles? Early indication, you know, this match says, I think this is still a good matchup for Miracles. Treasure Cruise did make it harder. As you saw, Matt just clawed back into that game on the back of Treasure Cruise. Yep. So Miracles certainly isn't happy to see that card on the other side of the board. But all in all, I still like the Miracle strategy here.
Yeah, you know.